It was midnight, and I was driving along a major road to a convention. The convention wouldn't start until a few days later, and I could have easily pulled into a hotel, spent the night there, and then carried on my way in the morning. But I was so close, and driving at night didn't bother me. In fact, I loved it. I used to do it just for fun back when my life wasn't so hectic, forcing me to abandon this hobby. So I decided to just keep driving through the night until I reached my destination. The road was completely empty. Only 1 or 2 cars passed me as I drove on through the night. It was amazing, so peaceful, so excitingly eerie. But after a while, I really needed to pee. I didn't feel like stopping at the side of the road and doing my business in the bushes. It was way too dark and creepy for that. I'd do it if I absolutely had to, but I was hoping I might come across a gas station and do my business in a more civil manner, especially since I now saw headlights in my rearview mirror. Most likely it was just some random mammal minding their own business. But when you're a feeble mouse, you learn quickly to be extra cautious. If whoever was behind me saw me stop and they had some nefarious idea pop into their head, I would be absolutely powerless to stop them. So I kept going, and sure enough, about half an hour later, a gas station came into view. I was so relieved. The headlights I saw earlier were still behind me, closer now. I could now see that they belonged to a truck. This eased my mind a little. It was just a trucker doing his job, not some random junkie looking for trouble. I pulled up to the gas station and got out of my car. The gas station was empty, unmanned. Perhaps someone didn't show up for their shift. The lights were off in the shop, though the station was still illuminated outside with a dim white light. There was one other car here, though it was parked out of sight, on the edge of the bubble of light, in the darkness. A little strange, but I shrugged it off. But my heart skipped a beat as I thought, what if the toilets were locked? I couldn't hold it in any longer. I sprinted towards the toilets on all fours, and to my relief, they were open. All the cubicles within were empty, except one. Maybe that's what that other car was, I thought. Just someone doing their business. Just like me. I quickly scurried into one of the cubicles opposite and locked the door behind me, sighing with relief when I finally let the stream of golden fluid flow. Just then, I heard the revving of a large engine outside. The trucker must be needing to use the toilets too, I thought, chuckling to myself. During all the other times I've been driving at night, I never bumped into anyone else in gas station toilets. They were always empty. But tonight, it was turning into some sort of toilet convention. Dumb thought, I know, but I was really tired at that point, and I was getting a little delirious. As I was about to unlock my cubicle, I heard the door to the toilets creak open. I froze, waiting for the person to get into their own cubicle so as to avoid awkwardness. I waited, and waited, and waited. Suddenly I heard 3 loud bangs, then a smooth young voice said,
"Come out, Mouse. It's the police. The gas station is closed. You shouldn't be here."
I didn't know what to do. Was he talking to me? No, it wasn't my cubicle he was banging on. Then a different meek voice responded.
Prove it. Show me your badge."
There was a long pause, after which, another 3 bangs.
"Open up, Mouse, then I'll show you my badge." "Slide it through the gap first, then I come out." "I don't have time for games, Mouse. I'm not allowed to give my badge to strangers. It must be on my person at all times." Then I'm not coming out. How do I know you're not a predator?" "I'm a squirrel, a fellow rodent. Can't you tell from my voice?" Squirrels can be predators too."
The squirrel scoffed.
"You know how rare that is, mate? You'd have to be nuts to play at being predator when you're just a little squirrel. Quit making a fool of yourself and come out. I just want to go home already, just like you do." "Well, I suppose... Fine, I'm sorry."
Then, there was a click as the mouse unlocked his cubicle. And then, there was an ear-piercing scream. My heart skipped a beat. I took this opportunity to move my frozen body and look through the narrow crack in the door of my cubicle. I saw a snow-white squirrel, easily twice my height. He wore a dark blue jumper and some cargo pants of the same color, and on his paws he had black snakeskin paw protectors, with openings for his toes. As was the custom with squirrels, they needed their claws for climbing after all. The squirrel was definitely not a policeman. He was holding onto a terrified-looking brown pudgy mouse, and one of his bright pink paws was now clamping the mouse's muzzle shut, stifling his scream.
Be quiet, Mouse. You're gonna ruin your date!
The squirrel leaned down and dragged his tongue across the mouse's face, still gripping onto his muzzle. The mouse tried to squirm away, but he was pinned against the wall. There was nowhere for him to go, so he closed his eyes and endured the onslaught of squirrel breath and of thick squirrel spit being smeared across his face. Copious amounts of drool dripped down his muzzle once the attacker was done.
A date with my stomach!
This renewed the mouse's struggles. The squirrel lifted the mouse by his muzzle and slammed him against the wall. Once, twice, 3 times, until the mouse fell limp in his grasp.
There we go, much better,
said the squirrel, smirking at the dazed mouse that weakly tried to pry the squirrel's claws off his muzzle. The mouse looked surprised when it worked, but it wasn't the mouse's efforts that made the squirrel let go of his muzzle. The squirrel did so voluntarily, as he now grabbed the mouse by his hips and lifted him up into his waiting maw, which was dripping with drool in anticipation. The squirrel effortlessly crammed the mouse's entire head into his mouth, his terrifying incisors hovering menacingly over the mouse's neck. When the mouse's struggles grew stronger again, all he had to do was press those incisors against his prey's neck threateningly, and it instantly made the mouse go limp with terror again. The squirrel purred and swished his puffy tail back and forth as he seemingly tasted the mouse, and I could hear wet gulping sounds as he swallowed excess drool. I frowned, imagining the horror of having my head stuck in a hot, slimy, claustrophobic squirrel maw, with nothing to breathe with but rank squirrel breath, spit oozing into every single one of my orifices. It was at this point that I felt like I had to do something. But what? My claws were short and blunt. I cursed myself for not keeping them in good shape. The squirrel's, on the other paw, looked sharp as daggers, and he was much, much bigger than me. I wanted to do something, but in the end, just stayed in the cubicle and stared at the unimaginable scene before me in horror.
This is illegal! You'll go to jail!
The desperate mouse exclaimed, sputtering from the vile drool that was being forced into his mouth, his voice muffled as the squirrel's tongue pressed against the mouse's lips. The squirrel pulled the mouse's head out of his mouth. The mouse gulped down the fresh air greedily, his head still connected to the squirrel's lips by a thick strand of stretchy drool.
You know what else is illegal?
The squirrel asked with a smirk.
Your ugly-ass face, and you'll go to my gut.
The mouse exclaimed in terror as his head was once again crammed into the squirrel's suffocating mouth. Wet glurk after wet glurk pulled the mouse deeper and deeper into the squirrel's maw. With every blink I took, the mouse disappeared more and more from this world, until he was nothing more than a wiggling bulge on the squirrel's midsection. The squirrel removed his jumper, which became uncomfortably tight from the bulge. Then he tilted his head back, let out a loud belch, and smacked his lips.
Delightful. Really delightful,
he said, patting his belly. It shrunk a little from the belch, and even through the thick snow-white fur, I swear I could see little mouse paws pressing against his flesh, yearning for the outside world.
Hush. Save your energy, little mouse. We have a long trip ahead of us. And at the end of it, my warm, cozy bed awaits. Unfortunately, all that awaits you is my toilet.
He chuckled at the mouse's reaction. A few powerful but ultimately pointless kicks. It was exactly the reaction he wanted. I watched him leave the toilets, then I heard the revving of the large engine again, and he was gone. I waited in silence for what felt like an eternity, trying to process what just happened. Then I opened my cubicle door and walked out of the toilets. Why didn't he come after me? Surely he wouldn't want any witnesses. And it was evident there was someone else here. There were 2 cars. Unless... My stomach dropped. He was the trucker following me. Was he following me on purpose? Did he want to eat me all this time? Did he think the mouse he ate was the very mouse he was following down the road earlier, and he did not notice the other car parked in the darkness, or that the cubicle opposite was also occupied? Did that poor mouse take the fall for me? Did I lead this vile predator to him? Guilt made me panic, but I forced myself to calm down. This was not the time. There was still hope. I quickly pulled out my phone and dialed 911. I frantically explained to the operator everything that happened, but it was the middle of nowhere. By the time the cops arrived, the squirrel was long gone, and the poor mouse was probably already half digested. And that was that. I ended up not going to the convention. I wasn't in the mood anymore. I got back home as soon as I could and took a few more days off work to get my thoughts back in order. All that happened 2 years ago. But the story doesn't end here. 1 year ago, I was sitting on the couch watching TV. Some televised court show came on, and I rolled my eyes and was about to switch to a different channel when I froze, and my face was drained of all color. Snow white, just like the squirrel staring at me through the TV screen. It was him. He had been caught during a different predation attempt. On live television, he admitted to having devoured 5 mammals in total: 1 mouse, 2 voles, and 2 weasels. They asked him if he feels any remorse for what he had done. He said no. They asked him if there's anything he'd like to say to the families of the poor mammals he devoured. He turned to the mouse family, he licked his lips, and he said,
I'm sure you'll be glad to know that they were all simply delicious, especially the mouse.
The way he said it sent a shiver down my spine. He was sentenced to life in prison for illegal predation, but wouldn't you know it, he escaped 9 months later, meaning that he's now been lurking in the shadows of society for 3 months, probably continuing to prey on unsuspecting victims. I can't stop thinking about him. I worry that I might stumble upon him again someday, and this time, I won't be so lucky. But then another thought always comes after that. Good, it says. Let him come. Death would be better than living a life full of guilt. You were never meant to survive that day. Another mouse's life was taken just so that yours could go on. It was you who was supposed to end up wriggling in that gut on that fateful night. Cloudripper. That was the squirrel's name. The name that haunts me to this very day. You're probably expecting me to end this story with the classic Cloudripper. I hope we never meet again. But you'd be wrong. This one ends differently. Cloudripper. If by some slim chance you're reading this, I hope we do meet again. Maybe I'll get to avenge that poor mouse. Or at the very least, you'll catch me and send me down into that murderous gut of yours, cleansing me of my guilt and my sin. Come find me and fix your mistake. I dare you.